Give a little intro for Daniel. He is a forest health project coordinator for Cleveland Metro Parks, where he focuses on beech leaf disease, research and survey work. He helped implement the long-term BLD monitoring protocol, which has been used to set up 100 monitoring plots across the eastern United States and Canada. He also conducts surveys for other forest health threats like hemlock woolly adelgid and elongate hemlock scale, which we've just heard a lot about. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks, Jan, and thanks everyone for joining today. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Good.
Well, I can see Whitmore. I can still, okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. So yeah, that was a great overview by Mark to start us off. And I'm going to zoom in here and talk about one specific pest that's been bothering us, and that's beech leaf disease. So I know that's been a pretty urgent topic. And so I'm going to start off with some background and survey information, where it's at, and what we know about it so far, and then get into some research and monitoring efforts that we've implemented over the past couple of years. And then finally end off with a really hot topic, which is management. So what do we do about beech leaf disease? Are there any treatments available, and how do those look? So beech leaf disease was first found in 2012 in Lake County, Ohio, Northeast Ohio, by Lake Metro Parks biologist John Pogachnik. And he noticed these odd banding patterns that were showing up on beech leaves that didn't seem to go away after just a few years. And so the first symptoms that he noticed were these dark interveinal banding patterns. What we call mild symptoms typically cover about 2/3 of the leaf surface or less. These leaves tend to be normal in shape and size, with just a few up to, again, about 2/3 of the leaf surface that might be covered in these dark bands. When we get to more advanced symptoms or heavy symptoms, we have typically over 2/3 of the leaf surface that's covered. We tend to get smaller, shriveled, curled leaves that are really thick. Texture-wise, you can feel a really significant difference between them. They feel really thick and leathery. And so these symptoms are apparent not only within the same tree, but also oftentimes within the same bud. So this next picture shows a handful of different symptoms on the same branch. Let's see if I can bring up my laser pointer here. Here we go. So we see here, this bud here produced just 2 leaves that were all mildly symptomatic. Just a few inches away, we've got a single bud that produced leaves that were all asymptomatic. And then again, just another few inches away, this bud produced leaves that were all heavily symptomatic. And so something that's going to be interesting to talk about later is why that might be the case. But we do see all these same symptoms or leaf conditions within the same tree and even within the same branch many times. So talking about symptoms from a bottom-up perspective, there's 2 things that I want to mention here. One being that the best way to look at symptoms is as a silhouette from below. And so looking up into the sunlight, I often have, in fact, at webinars or in-person presentations, I tend to have laminated sheets of leaves. And you can actually hold those leaves up to the light and see those dark banding patterns. It's really, really good to see it looking upward as opposed to at eye level or below. The second part about the bottom-up perspective is thinking about where we first see beech leaf disease. And that tends to be in the young saplings or the shrub layer, or the very lower portion of canopies in large trees. And so that picture on the bottom left is a really good ideal place to look for beech leaf disease for the first time. Some late symptoms that might show up throughout the season. On the left, we have what is a late flush of leaves that tends to be set off by 2 to 3 weeks from the first emergence of leaves, which happens in Ohio early May. So these late flush leaves can happen late May all the way into June. And they're small, they're thin, they're lime green, and they always are asymptomatic. And so again, thinking about what happens in that bud, these leaves are developing outside of their typical bud. It's sort of a late flush of leaves that comes out, not overwintering on the tree like most of the buds do. They come out always asymptomatic. They're always this really pale lime green color. And it's an interesting little phenomenon. And the picture there that you see is actually on a completely asymptomatic tree. And so this does happen on completely asymptomatic trees, but in areas that are heavily impacted, we see typically 25 to 50% of the entire canopy is made up of these odd little leaves. We also see later in the season, throughout the summer, we can see those dark green bands become chlorotic or yellow. And some of them also develop a bit of necrotic tissue. And this tends to happen on the heavier symptom leaves, but it can occur throughout the season on those banded portions as well. In fact, you see a little bit of necrosis in there, and then on this band here as well. Other symptoms that we tend to get later in the development of beech leaf disease is what we call aborted buds. These buds remain on the twig through the summer, throughout July into August, September even. They never develop leaves. They never leaf out. And when you touch them, they're really brittle and dark brown. They dry out throughout the summer, and they'll often fall off. And so what we get then is twig or branch dieback. And what that ultimately turns into is lower canopy levels. So we've got reduced canopy in our sapling and shrub layer on the bottom right. That stand is heavily impacted by beech leaf disease, and you can see there are lots of stems, but very few leaves that are on those stems. And that decline is much faster in that shrub or small sapling layer, but it can affect our large mature trees as well. And so on the left, you see one that is on its way out. This tends to take a bit longer. The saplings can be impacted anywhere from 2 to 5 years. We can see mortality, and our large trees are starting to show some mortality limitedly, not super widespread yet, but we've had it for less than 10 years just about now. So we are definitely starting to see that mortality ramp up. What species are affected? Well, we've got our Native American beech here, our Fagus grandifolia, as well as European beech and all of the varieties that go with that. So that includes your copper, your tricolor, and weeping beech, as well as Chinese and Oriental beech. But interestingly, at Holden Forests and Gardens, which is a local arboretum near here, it is not impacting their Japanese beech, Fagus crenati, which is an interesting observation, but a little bit more on that later. The most common symptom or look-alike symptom that we have is what I define as this leaf curling aphid. I don't think it has a common name, and in fact the scientific name is escaping me as well, but Buckeye Yard and Garden Online, this BYGL resource on the left, has a really good opportunity to look up some interesting images. And you see here that it's always curled underneath the leaf. So I can pull out my pointer again here. That's the edge of the leaf is always curled underneath. And we've got this yellow, it looks like cracked glass. You can see a little bit better over here. And then again, as that silhouette from below, you see it pretty good here. It's in fact curled on both sides. And that's often what we get that looks very similar to beech leaf disease, but in fact is quite different. This tends to be over a pretty large area, continuous area of the leaf, whereas beech leaf disease can be banded and have large spaces between those bands. But we do see these co-occurring over the same range. They don't seem to be related in any way as far as tree health or disease progression, but it is a common look-alike that often confuses people. So I'll pause here for question 1.
All right, thank you very much. So let's get question one going. So as a reminder, if you're here for credits, please make sure that you answer this question. If you're not here for credits and just want to see how you're doing, you can do it too. I am getting a lot of questions asking if this is being recorded. It is, and it will be posted on our CCE website, and the Soil and Water Conservation District will also be posting it. So you can keep an eye out after this presentation is done for where it's going to be posted, and we'll let everybody know when it's posted. But right
Hillary,
now,
it looks like
yeah.
someone ended the poll.
Oh, I think it must be someone closing out of it after. Okay, so let's put it in the chat. So what is the very first leaf symptom of beech leaf disease? You can say A, B, C, or D. Is it dark interveinal banding? Is it aborted buds? Is it late flush of lime green leaves, or is it chlorosis? So A is dark banding, B is aborted buds, C is late flushing of lime green leaves, and 4 is chlorosis. So you guys can put it in the chat. And we'll see, we'll give everybody a second. So it was, what was a first leaf symptom? And it's dark interveinal banding, aborted buds, late flush of lime green growth, or chlorosis. And let me just look through it real fast. So it looks like everyone is saying A. Daniel, everyone is thinking that it is dark interveinal banding on leaves.
Yes, absolutely. That is the first symptom we see, the first thing we're looking for in those early detections. Some of those other things can pop up later in the season, or later in the development or progression of beech leaf disease over time, but definitely that dark interveinal banding pattern. So where is beech leaf disease now? This is the map, the final year-end map from 2021, where we had over actually exactly 120 counties across the US and Canada, and that is 11 states. So pretty significant spread. And when you look at that as a county count over time, last year we added, I think it was 47, 48 counties, 49. And so you can see that exponential growth. That's pretty typical of a new emerging spreading disease or pest or pathogen. And unfortunately this year, this is the mid-year update, and we already surpassed last year's total with over 50 counties added this year. And actually, instead of 2 states, we actually have 3. It's Michigan, New Hampshire, and I just found out Maryland is added to that. So it's actually 14 states or provinces. Those that are completely filled in, they win the award of not something you typically want to win, but Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and then I believe, I put an asterisk there for Pennsylvania, but I believe that has been filled in. There may be 1 or 2 holdout counties, but this thing is really spreading fast. And so part of the question that a lot of people have had is whether or not it's truly spreading, or are we just doing a better job of looking and raising that awareness to get people to go out and look. And so one of these maps that I put together every year is a survey map. So last year in total, we had over 1,300 surveys in 21. Those come from both state agencies or state reports, as well as community scientists. And so we've done a really good job looking in some pretty big areas of the country where it potentially could be. Southeastern Ohio has done a good job. Maryland has done a phenomenal job. PA is looking across most of the state, New York, Vermont. I mean, there are definitely people out there looking and not finding it. And so what that says to me is essentially that, when you look in 2021 and don't see anything, and look again in 2022 and it's there, to me, that shows that it is in fact truly spreading. So how did we actually come to get this survey map? Well, it was very difficult early on. Every state has their own reporting mechanism, their own app or their data collection tool. And some don't even have data collection tools. So we developed tree health surveys specifically for beech leaf disease. So we've got the Apple and Android version available for free. And in fact, you point your camera at either one of these QR codes and it'll pop open the PDF user manual on the left, which will give you the links to the app. And then on the right, if you wanted to listen to me talk for a while, I've got an OSU, Ohio State University Extension webinar. And if you fast forward to minute 25, I talk specifically about the app and how to use it to go and survey for beech leaf disease. So what do we do in this app? Well, we're really targeting both professionals and community scientists. And so I jumped in, early on with right into beech leaf disease, but here we go through a training of what is a beech. You see this nice smooth bark down here. We've got those simple serrated leaves that are alternate arranged on the branches. And so we go through how to find a beech, how to identify beech leaf disease symptoms, and then other pests, as Mark pointed out, beech bark disease here with the scale insect and the Neonectaria fungus, other pests or similar look-alike issues with beech. So this is a really, really great tool. I urge you to check it out if you aren't familiar with it, or if you want to report beech leaf disease, or in fact, asymptomatic trees are just as important for reporting. And I'm sure that New York has I think there's another app that you can use, and maybe someone can put that in the chat as well. But we are using Tree Health Survey, and that's widely available to anybody. So another project that we wanted to look at, and this is with funding from the USDA Forest Service, their emerging pest and pathogen funding. We wanted to see the disease progression over time. And so we went out early in the season before leaves even emerged and we flagged branches and then followed up with pictures every 2 weeks roughly to see how symptoms change during a growing season. So the first thing we noticed, I point out with the arrow because it's difficult to see there. There's one single band on the edge of that leaf. And then the two leaves over here are heavily symptomatic, and this is early 2019. So we definitely see leaves immediately as they emerge in May. And over a growing season, that one band remained one band. It didn't grow, it didn't expand to multiple sites, no additional bands appeared. And the other thing that you notice is there was a leaf drop, where actually both of those heavily symptomatic high severity leaves fell off. And in fact, they can start developing necrosis and fall off as early as June. And that only occurs really on those high severity, heavily symptomatic leaves. Our mild and asymptomatic leaves, especially of beech, can stay on even through November, late October, early November in some cases. So the fact that we've got early leaf drop is a little concerning for photosynthesis. What we wanted to do then is see how this impacted next year's growth. And so the answer is it doesn't really. There's no ordered progression from asymptomatic to mild symptom to heavy symptom and then to aborted bud. Because here, where we had our heavy symptoms before, we have that same little branch segment there that forms completely asymptomatic leaves. So there really is no linear progression within a single bud or a single bud leaf pair. So what causes beech leaf disease? This has been a debate within the research community, but the biggest culprit that we have identified so far is this Little Ancus crenati mccannii, which is a microscopic nematode or worm. And so you can see these really nice quality scanning electron microscopy photos here. And this is done through USDA APHIS. Lynn Carta is heading up that work and done some really nice microscopy work. And then her in combination with David Burke at Holden Forests and Gardens, they have done these bud inoculations where essentially we were able to grab out thousands of these nematodes from heavily affected leaves put them into a water solution and then inoculate them into buds before leaf out. So they did both a fall inoculation and an April inoculation just before leaves emerged. And both were able to get beech leaf disease symptoms. Not quite as clear in the April inoculation, but you can still see some banding here on these leaves. And so really this was a really good start for us because it has taken years, in fact, to identify this Litholanchus crenati McCannii. And some of the results of that are, again, looking into the damage that's caused. This is a cross section of a leaf. Again, really awesome microscopy photos here. Healthy leaf structure on the left. And then on the right, it is just astounding. It looks nothing like a healthy leaf. You can see lots of damage in here. And in fact, if my eyes were a little better, I should be able to see some nematodes in here. But that is essentially damage that we think is done by the nematode. Now, unfortunately, that's about all that I'm going to say on the nematode, because there are still lots of questions that we don't have answered. So what is the full distribution of the nematode? Is there a population threshold that needs to be passed? You know, maybe 10 nematodes don't cause an issue, but 1,000, you know, that's when we start to see those leaf symptoms. Are there additional microbial agents that are involved? Possibly a bacteria that co-infects with the nematode. Maybe the nematode causes an opening to allow an infection to occur. And then what is happening as far as movement across the local and the broader landscape? Are there vectors? You know, are we beetles moving nematodes, moving bacteria, or mites carried on birds? These are all questions that are being actively addressed right now as far as research goes. So now I'm going to move into some monitoring efforts that we've had at Cleveland Metro Parks. We are a very old park system founded in 1917, and we're right next door to Lake County, so just to the northeast of us here. And we first got beech leaf disease in 2014. So just 2 years it took to move over to our county. And we started some monitoring programs in 2014. And in fact, this is a really nice display of how quickly it moves across our park system. So in 2015, we had about 20% of our plots that were affected by beech leaf disease. And you can see that number just growing over time, year over year. And in fact, most recently in 2021, we had 85% of our plots with beech leaf disease over just a 6-year period, from 2015 to 2021. And this is not just one leaf, you know, one stem in a plot. This is 87% of the stems in those plots are affected with beech leaf disease. So it is very difficult to escape this nematode or this beech leaf disease. And this is a really striking picture, and I'll put up both side by side here because it's pretty devastating to see. This is an exact comparison of the same plot, same time of the year, same time of day even, from 2011 to 2016. And remember, we didn't even get beech leaf disease until 2014. And so this is only 3 years post beech leaf disease appearance. So this is really an astounding comparison side by side. We've also been tracking mortality. In 2018, we saw 7% mortality. That number has grown to 10% last year. And typically they're these small stems, saplings, we should call them. They're not very large. They're growing still, or they were. But we're increasing both in the size and that frequency overall. And so those small stems are now becoming slightly larger, about 4 inches in size we are finding within these monitoring plots, but there are some mature trees that are succumbing as well outside of those monitoring plots. So looking at spread across our county, in the northeast there, again in Lake County, those stars show the initial detection sites of beech leaf disease in 2012, and they got to our easternmost reservations in 2014. They're in that dark orange color, and they spread, beech leaf disease spread both west and south across our county over just a couple year period. And so we found that rate to be about 10 miles per year. But again, this is on a very local scale where the landscape features may have a really big impact on determining the rate of spread. And so one, Cleveland is a very highly urbanized and fragmented area. Not a lot of natural areas. You know, we've got a lot of development, a lot of housing, and then thinking about the size and scale of the protected land as well, potentially providing vectors or avenues for continuing to spread, dispersal corridors. And when we move out west in Ohio, we get into a lot of agricultural land. So that movement has not been very fast west, but if we move east into Pennsylvania and New York, where there are lots of contiguous beech and forested stands, that rate of spread is pretty drastic, as we saw earlier with that map across the eastern US. What we've done then is taken a subset of those monitoring plots, 13 to be exact, and we've started to assess them individual trees for beech leaf disease conditions. And so we've got a range of BLD symptoms ranging from low all the way up to high severity, and then varying also in the timing of first exposure. So we picked plots that averaged about 20 trees per plot, 302 in total, and we wanted to make sure that we had a clear canopy view of all these so we could thoroughly assess the entire canopy. And so what we did is split out these trees for analysis and visuals here, with small trees being in the light green and large trees over 5 inches in the dark green. You can see that the small trees start to decline within just a few years. So year 0 being that first year of detection. This is overall average canopy. And so you can see the small trees are declining pretty rapidly. You know, now we're just in year 6 and 7, we're below 25% canopy coverage. Our large trees are hanging on as far as overall canopy coverage, but we do see quite a bit of decline in the overall health of the tree. You know, there are lots of beech leaf disease symptoms, and we again are seeing mortality primarily in those saplings and small trees, but it is increasing in size and frequency, with occasional mortality of large trees, typically after 5 years or more. And this is what some of our worst hit stands look like. You know, this, if you know anything about beech forests and beech trees, they're very, you know, shady. There's a lot of canopy in there, and this looks nothing like what we should see in a healthy beech stand. So a larger monitoring effort took place also between the U.S. Forest Service across all of our states here, and then Ontario as well. You can see here that there's a number of plots across the Great Lakes area, primarily around Lake Erie. And really what we did in 2019 was our initial pilot year. We set up the protocol and established 60 plots in that year only, primarily using beech leaf disease as our driver for where to put plots. This number has grown significantly. So now we're at 145 as of last year. I think we're closer to 200 this year, as more states in the Northeast have grown and expanded their plot network. But really what we wanted to do first was determine the factors causing tree declines and those increases in beech leaf disease severity, and then also look at multiple beech pests, as was pointed out earlier. You know, we not only have beech leaf disease, but also beech bark disease, and how do the two of those interact together. So the main takeaways I want to share here, and if you're interested, the full citation there for the publication is below. But really what we see is that BLD is very common across the study area. 58% in the US and 44% of trees had it in Ontario. It does affect all size classes from saplings all the way up to dominant trees. And then from this map, you actually see the dark red here is areas with all of these pests: beech leaf disease, the scale insect, and the neonectria fungus. And despite covering a pretty broad range there, beech bark disease was rather uncommon in both study areas. I think neonectria was about 4% presence in trees. So beech leaf disease is certainly becoming the more dominant issue for beech trees here. Okay, so let me see here. My screen's a little bit blocked here for my header. That's okay. We're going to look at management now. And so New York DEC did a really nice experiment here, and they were trying to clear cut trees that essentially had symptoms that they could see. So they went and mapped the area at 1 acre in 2020, and they removed all of those trees. I believe they burned on site, or at least cut. Maybe they removed them, but essentially they wanted to eradicate beech leaf disease in that study area in 2020. And unfortunately, what they saw in 21 is went back and they actually mapped the area at 4.6 acres. And they thought that it was a couple of potential reasons. It was difficult to delineate the exact boundary. So perhaps they missed one random leaf somewhere in the canopy. It can be very difficult to find everything. And then more likely is that nematodes might be further than the visible leaf symptoms. And so if you're removing some of the symptoms, there are additional nematodes that will continue to build their population and potentially continue to spread beech leaf disease in the meantime. So clear cutting is not a good option. But this is sort of one of my favorite parts of this talk, because it's a little bit more uplifting, I'll say, promising. So we've moved on now to chemical treatments, which Mark said has been very effective in some cases. With Davy Tree Expert Company, Cleveland Metro Parks has started this polyphosphate 30 treatment, which began in 2017, and it's used primarily as a turfgrass fertilizer, but doesn't seem to have the same impact on the tree as far as results go, or the mechanism for behind those results. So it seems to stimulate the plant's natural defense mechanisms. And that's about as detailed as we can get. So we go through 2 soil injections in the summer, or a drench. We've started that now as well. And we picked plots that had saplings only. So we wanted small trees to see those effects sooner, because those trees tend to be impacted quicker. So we thought that maybe they will bounce back a little bit faster. So no mature trees or root sprouts here, mild symptoms only, and we had 20 treated and 20 control trees.
You have about 5 minutes left, Daniel.
Thank you, Hillary. We went and severed the root connections between trees with a spade, and then we went through again twice every year, sometimes in May and June. Other times it's been June and August, just sometime during the summer. I don't think it's imperative to be the exact right time, but we use 2 ounces of the polyphosphate 30 product with 14 ounces of water per inch of diameter of that tree. And then we went ahead and did our canopy assessments in September, same time every year. And we've seen a really drastic difference between control and treated trees. So this is the percent of canopy coverage, with our treated trees being significantly different within just the second year of treatment. So 2017 being the first year of treatment, no effect within a year, but that following year, we do see a pretty drastic difference. And so our treated trees are hanging on somewhere around 70% canopy coverage, whereas our control trees are down below 25% at this time. If we look at the proportion of healthy or asymptomatic leaves, in addition to the canopy coverage, we are also seeing some pretty good results here, with our healthy leaves being about 1/3 of the canopy, whereas in control trees being about 10%. Mild symptom leaf cover does not look all that different. So we do have mild symptoms still on our treated trees. But you can see on the right, our heavy symptoms, there is starting to get a little bit of a gap here after a while. Our treated trees being about 10% coverage or percentage of the canopy with heavy leaves, and our control trees being, again, about a third. So pretty big difference there. We also tracked dieback in two different forms. We call one main branch dieback and the other fine. Where main branch is what you think of with emerald ash borer, with the entire vascular system being cut off within a main branch going all the way back to the stem. That does not seem to be the case with beech leaf disease. We have very little full branch dieback here, but what we do see is a lot of fine branches that are dead. And so what that means is you've got an entire branch that's still vascular, has activity in the vascular system, and maybe there's just a few leaves at the very end of that branch sprinkled here or there. And so you know, most of that branch is still actively transporting materials, but there are a lot of buds that just never leaved out, and we see pretty drastic canopy dieback as far as thinning and fine dead branches go. We also then went this past year and again this September as well, and wanted to quantify nematode abundance in leaf symptoms. So we took 4 representative leaves per tree and punched just a simple hole punch at that standardized location. And we found almost a 10-fold difference in treated tree nematode abundance versus control nematode abundance. So about 3 nematodes per centimeter squared of leaf area compared to about 40 nematodes. So pretty awesome differences. And in fact, this is an image. This is a really nice image to share, because on the left, we've got a treated tree. It's got most of its branch still intact. It does have mild symptoms, but it also has healthy symptoms. Whereas on the right, it looks very barren, and what is there does not look good at all. There's necrosis, there's heavy symptoms, very few healthy asymptomatic leaves there. So just a quick summary here, our 6 years of treatment, we've got greater canopy coverage in treated trees. We've got better proportion of asymptomatic leaf cover. Mild symptoms, not so much. Heavy symptoms doing better. And then our canopy dieback in fine dead branches is looking much better in our treated trees. So is there some acceptable threshold of symptoms that is still worthwhile to treat this? You know, maybe have a couple of symptoms here and there, but overall that tree is still alive. We are working on getting this protocol out and available to the public. So please message me or send me an email, I should say, if you are interested, and I can try and forward that along. I'm just going to quickly go through these other treatments. Because we've had some promising results with the saplings, we've expanded to large trees in 2021. Those results are still coming in. We then expanded to trial a emamectin benzoate, which is a general insecticide, as well as abamectin, or an abicide, which does have nematocidal properties. Those also started in 2021, and results are still coming in. The nice thing about this is we've also partnered with Bartlett Tree experts who are working with actually Davey. It's nice because these two companies, private companies, are working together to make sure that there's no overlap in treatments. So even though we're doing emamectin benzoate with Bartlett as well, they're using a different product, different size trees, different symptoms. They used Triage G4 in 2019 and Mectinite in 2021. Again, different concentrations of chemicals. Not super promising results here with any of the emamectin benzoate products, unfortunately. So I'll put this up for a quick second just to summarize the treatments. And if you want to screenshot that, this is a really nice slide. So again, all the treatments that are ongoing here at Cleveland Metro Parks and who we're doing them with. So question 2, and then I've got, I think, 1 or 2 more slides to finish up.
Awesome. So sorry about all the problems with the polls. I think we've worked them out. I'm going to launch it right now. What is the most promising treatment to date? And again, if you are here for credits, make sure you definitely answer the question. Or if you're not here for any credits, feel free to challenge yourself and answer it if you are interested in seeing how you would do. We got about 40% of people answering so far. Okay, we'll keep it going. We'll keep it open for another minute, not minute, but another couple seconds. It seems like everyone so far is saying the polyphosphate 30.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll end.
Definitely the most promising. We are seeing really good results with that. The others are not showing full effectiveness yet, but some tweaking of protocols, some changing of chemicals. We're still working to research all of the possible avenues. So I just want to end with this too, this beech leaf disease resistance. We are looking for potentially resistant trees that we know have been in the vicinity of BLD for over 6 years. And we have found several of those using these guidelines. So it has to be present in the stand for at least 5 years, ideally more. And those trees have to have at least 75% full canopies and less than 25% symptoms, ideally less than 10% symptoms is great. So what we've done is collected scion from those trees. And this is a multi-year effort with Holden Forest and Gardens and the U.S. Forest Service. Those scions have been grafted, and we will essentially force a certain quantity of nematodes on them to see which genetic material poses the best possible avenue to pursue as far as resistance goes. So this is going to be a multi-year, long-term project. And we will see how that goes. So just wanted to end with this, that yes, beech leaf disease is definitely spreading, causing mortality and decline. We do need to focus on those survey areas that are adjacent to known BLD infestations. And if you have or know where beech leaf disease is or know where it's not, both of those are important to share with state representatives or with Tree Health Survey. The treatments with polyphosphate 30 are doing really good, very promising there. And unfortunately, there's still lots unknown about beech leaf disease biology, the nematode, vectors, treatments. This is still a fairly new issue, and we are working to address all of these things actively. There are lots of research groups involved. And in fact, here are some of them now. And I'll end with a happy picture of a healthy beech on the right and my contact info at the bottom. It is not often that I get to see a happy, healthy beech anymore. So I have to end on somewhat of a happy note. So
thank you so much. You do have a couple of questions, so I'll just combine a few. So the polyphosphate treatments, how practical are they on a landscaping scale, and how practical and safe are they for homeowners?
So they're considered safe. They're not really, again, it was used as a turf grass fertilizer. The application is pretty easy. Any of your tree care companies can do it. Once we share the protocol as well, it's not too difficult. But as far as practicality, if it's an individual tree, a landscape tree, I think that's probably the best application for it. In a forest context where I work in a park system, it's not all that practical to treat the hundreds of thousands of trees. If there are specific stands or areas that you're interested in keeping, really healthy, that's what we're kind of aiming for right now. Just select trees, select individuals that we want to maintain.
Awesome. And then another one is, even if a tree has a mild symptoms, would it still need treatment, and would it be put on a constant treatment plan?
Yeah, the trees, the small tree sapling plot that we started, they all had mild symptoms, and you saw where those control untreated trees went. You know, very, very fast decline over just a couple of years. I would recommend, if they're mildly symptomatic, that's probably the best time to start treatment. We don't know if we can rescue trees. That's going to be one of our new, you know, caveats that we're going to try and explore. Can we rescue trees that have declined very rapidly and bring them back to decent health? We don't know the answer to that question yet.
Awesome. And just one more, when looking at these trees, underplantings, using leaves as mulching, you know, what's your take on that, especially if it's a, you know, an urban park or you know, or a homeowner?
Yeah, definitely. I would not use infected leaves for mulch. Underplantings, we have not done anything there yet. I know it's something we're going to have to consider because these canopy gaps are getting quite significant. We've got a lot of sugar maple coming up. You know, it's going to be a difficult question to answer. I don't have a good answer to that one. But if you're in an area where you're planning to see decline in beech, I would start considering underplantings now. Yeah.
And you know what, there's more coming in, so we're gonna keep going for another 2 minutes.
Okay.
And are you finding that you're getting natural regeneration in your parks?
I mean, regeneration is occurring, but unfortunately, those small stems are the ones that are first and hardest hit by beech leaf disease. So there's attempts at regeneration. We also have really, really heavy deer browse, which makes regeneration hard on all species. But those that are regenerating are, you know, they're succumbing pretty quickly to BLD. So we're not seeing very successful regeneration.
Okay, and this will be the last one. So there's questions about the application protocol. We will have this up, and if you want, Daniel, you can send that chart to me and I can send it out for everyone. And then are the protocols and all the applications the same for Copper Beech as well?
Yeah, so they'll be the same for all beech. We don't have the official protocol out and available yet. We're working with Davey Tree to put that together. I'm hoping sometime in the very, very near future.